And we're live after about a month of trying to work out Christelle's sound settings. And then we just turned it on and off again and it worked, which was...
all we had to do was reboot the computer and it was fine. Oh my goodness, what in the world?
Have you ever seen that comedy, The IT Crowd, where they go, turn it on and off again? That's basically the answer to everything.
That's all we had to do. We went into every sound system, every setting, it was just so, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
So what have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to? Okay, so right before I met with you, about 10 minutes before our show was supposed to start, I was hanging out with my sister who is doing a bodybuilding contest. She's entered a bodybuilding contest. So I'm helping her with pictures and video. And there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of training, a lot of building, a lot of coaching that takes place. So people don't just show up. They're definitely toning their body and eating a certain way and learning certain poses. I think she has 3 different coaches for 3 different reasons. So I've been helping her with that a little bit this week, aside from my own businesses. And I joined a really neat local women's networking group, which I'm super excited about. So it's all women who are business owners, small business owners to large business owners. So that's really exciting. And we had our first meeting, or they've been meeting for a while, but I attended for the first time this week. So that was fun.
Did you have to go for an initiation ceremony or something to join the group?
I love it because it's very intentional. The women there are very intentional. I can learn a lot from everyone who's there. They're all just phenomenal business leaders in San Diego. So I already know I'm going to learn a lot. And the leader is actually a brand professional. So the first meeting that we had, she went over branding. And that was, it was basically a class that we got within the network about better branding. And branding is my fault. I'm not good at branding. I've known that forever. So to be able to kind of have that class per se was really neat. So that's what I've been up to. What about you, Tim? What are you up to? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I'm really trying to think, what have I been up to? I watched a lot of YouTube videos, to be fair. So I've got actually decent suggestions for hot recommendations of YouTube videos.
Recommendations. Cool.
But I've kind of I've not been massively efficient. Not really done that much. I have made some improvements to some of my procedures for like the Twitter chats and things. I have made it. The funny thing is that I know that even if you feel you haven't done anything, most of the time you've actually done more than you think. You just can't remember it really.
Exactly.
I heard this guy, I think it was a podcast somewhere that they were saying that you should have, as well as a to-do list, you should have a to-do list where you write down the things you've done and say, ta-da! I've done this like every day or whatever. Or you actually just spend the time to go through what you've actually done, because we all forget what we've done. I've signed up for a few affiliate schemes. I've signed up to the TubeBuddy one. I don't know if you had a chance to watch Tuesday's interview.
I was going to ask you how that went. How did TubeBuddy go?
His name's Rob. Actually, he's not named. He's not. His
name's TubeBuddy. I thought it was TubeBuddy. Rob. How's Rob?
TubeBuddy. No, it went okay. It's funny though, because it's quite a different experience. I mean, I've done it as a podcast host. I've done interviews, but I've never really ever done it as a live. Well, I've done live video interviews before, but again, I've kind of usually been interviewed, and it's a different kind of experience coming up with questions and things, because it's usually I can rely on you to ask something or waffle on about something for a while, and that gives me a chance to think of like some sort of killer question or something I can ask. I think it went quite well, though. You talked about, gee, buddy, we talked about Rob travels, well, he doesn't travel that much, but for North America, he travels a lot. Yeah, we were talking, I asked him the free animals question, which stumped him.
Wait a minute, is he San Diegan? Is he local to me?
No, he's Vancouver.
Vancouver, but because we discovered something about this company in San Diego. Now I'm forgetting what it is.
I think they may be based in San Diego.
Okay.
But he works in Vancouver.
Okay. That's interesting. So I want to meet them if they're here. Wow.
Well,
so
he should have come along to the interview then, really, shouldn't he? You missed your chance now.
I had to say goodbye to my son. He Oh, that's what I've been up to this week. Speaking of, I was saying goodbye to my 23-year-old son who moved to Washington State. Which
is he studying there, or is he moved there?
So my boys have had a dream to start. One wants to start his own business. The other, who actually moved there, wants to buy property. So their entire goal and what they've been doing is saving money to do either or of those ventures. In San Diego, as you know, prices are ridiculously high. So they started kind of looking around the country as to where they can move. And Trevor, my oldest, actually grew up in the Pacific Northwest. He spent his kindergarten through 6th grade years there.
Yeah.
So that was a large chunk of his time. So for him to move back to the Pacific Northwest is normal for him. So he ended up deciding 2 weeks ago, he told me, can you take me to the airport? I'm like, what? Where are you going? Not telling you. Okay. He didn't tell me where he went. And then he called me from Washington and ended up telling me he was looking for a job and he's settling down there and he's going to be that'll be his home base as to where he buys property, which completely makes sense. And then eventually he wants to come back to San Diego. He does want to be in San Diego, but he's going to spend the next several years there, unless, I mean, who knows, anything could happen. But
there's been a whole load of videos I've seen, because I watch a whole broad spectrum of like political and other stuff. And all of the right-wing ones are all like, why we're leaving California because of all the high taxes and all the rest of it. Which I thought was quite funny. So clearly he's leaving for the tax reasons so he can start his property business in Washington.
That's funny. It could be. You never know. But yeah, so he moved there, and then my other son is going to be following him. My middle son will be following him by the end of the month. He's going up as well. So these two, my two sons, they're like two little old men. They stay together and they help each other. And it's really funny actually to see what they do. They have never not worked the same place since they began working at 16, 17, 18 years old. So they've always worked at the same place. And they stay long term. I mean, they stay a good chunk. Their first job was together. Second job was together. And now they're moving to Washington together. I wouldn't be surprised if they work at the same place. It's a great job, great company, and it's interesting. So one is 23, one's 20, and they're kind of following their dream now, which makes me happy that they're doing that. They know what they want, they're able to do it.
How many children have you got left with you then after they've
I have one. My 14-year-old. My 14-year-old is the only one left. He's the one with me.
He's no desire to go to Washington as well and work cleaning chimneys or something.
Brandon, we have discussed the possibility of leaving San Diego at many times because, again, the cost of living here is horrific. You cannot live on your own here unless you're filthy rich. I'll just say it. Yeah. I mean, as a single person wanting to live on your own, it's very challenging. So we've talked extensively about leaving San Diego as well. I mean, this is where I was raised, but to live as a single person, it's very hard. And I have a child, so I don't want to just jump in and have a roommate and live with just anyone. Yeah. That doesn't work for me or him. So I've looked at Arizona, I've looked at Washington, That's where I've looked seriously. Oregon as well, because that's close, and I've lived in Oregon before. So you never know. Pacific Northwest might be calling our name.
Yeah. Well, I'm not been to those states, so that works well for me.
Does that work for you, Tim? Would you like to?
Not me. Okay, well, I suppose we better go on to.
Why do you approve, Tim? I feel much better.
Hot recommendation. The funny thing is, I put up amongst all of the thing, I put up a website link to the name of something, so I wouldn't forget it. And now I've lost the link, and I can't remember what it's called. Oh no, it's come up in the Great Barrington Declaration. Have you heard of that?
No. What is that?
Let me see on their website. It's a bunch of scientists, and it started with 3 scientists who met last week in somewhere in Barrington in Massachusetts. And they've basically come up with their plan for. Let me do a bit of screen sharing. Screen tab. So here we have the Great Barrington Declaration, and they want to change the way that people do. Governments are treating the COVID infection, so that we stop the general lockdown approach and just worry about screening. So it's kind of like herd immunity in a way, even though they're trying to make it isn't.
What is it? I don't understand what this means.
Well, my recommendation is actually not this. It's there was a video interview with them, which is which I'll put in the show notes, because I've actually let's get rid of that. But yeah, I mean, they give quite a good interview. I put it in the show notes on this YouTube thing about where they're interviewed on this show, Unheard. I think it's Unheard or something like that, which is a lockdown one. Going through their reasons as to why they think that all the governments in the world are making the wrong policies. And there's a lot of scientists and people who are saying this. It's just because you wouldn't think, looking at most of the media, that you would think that everybody's all agreed on all the policy, but there's quite a lot of dispute in the scientific world about what actually should be done about COVID. So that was my recommendation, to watch the video interview, not really the declaration itself. I mean, the great problem is that it's a little bit of who's going to be the government that calls chicken first on that sort of thing. Because like even Trump in the US has like got enough kind of skin in the game to sort of say, oh, we're going to change policy now. His policy is like, we're going to introduce a vaccine like stupidly too soon, really. I mean, that seems to be Trump's policy. The same with all these antibodies. Basically, his policy is to rush in stuff too quickly. Well, their thing is to basically just keep the very elderly and the infirm shielded, but let everybody else go back to more or less normal life. Which you could argue some US states are doing that already, but
yeah,
it's just an interesting perspective. So that was my YouTube recommendation. There was also another one which I haven't got to hand, but have you heard of again, my mind's gone. I can't remember what it's called. It's something like the Rishat structure. There's something called the Rishat structure in Africa. I'd never heard of it.
It sounds interesting, actually.
Wikipedia. So I'm just basically Rishat. So I saw a YouTube video about it's called the Rishat structure, and it's basically, I mean, actually you can see it from Google Maps. If you go on Google Maps, I can't be bothered to go on Google Maps, but it's It's a structure that's been in like Mauritania for Mauritania is in sort of Saharan Africa. And people never really knew what the hell it was. And there was some speculation that it was a naturally occurring thing. But this video I watched was claiming that actually this is the site of the city of Atlantis.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason is because they've known for a while that like the whole of the Northern Sahara, a large chunk of the Northern Sahara used to be about 10,000 years ago, used to be like forest land, and it was a big river system. And the speculation, apparently some of the old Greek things that talk about, like Plato and Herodias, who talk about Atlantis, they actually, in one of them, they actually mentioned that it was in North Africa, Atlantis. It wasn't like roughly given the location that could be where this is, which is near the Atlas Mountains in Mauritania. So, I mean, the thing is that it's like, it's possibly total bunkum.
Yeah, but this is interesting to me. I'm going to watch this. This is fascinating.
Yeah, so...
did they find like artifacts or...
Well, there are artifacts there, but there isn't any evidence, because there was another video I watched today where this guy who'd seen this video suggesting that this was the site of the ancient Atlantic actually went to Mauritania, which is extremely risky because Mauritania is, apart from like Algeria, Mauritania is possibly the most dangerous country in the world to visit that's not at war with somebody. It's basically known for sort of massive amounts of violence and slavery and all sorts of stuff. It's like really not a particularly nice place to visit. But this American guy went there and he was kind of going around, wandering around, and he said like, the trouble is, it's like there's loads of artifacts that they found there, but they're all like tiny little arrowheads and things like this. There's no obvious sort of evidence of building in the structure, but the whole myth of Atlantis was that there was a big earthquake and this whole area was flooded and wiped out. So as he said, like, well, it could be the case that this actually was Atlantis, and it's just like all the building structures which they had, because they didn't build, they weren't a megalithic society. They didn't build massive structures. They only built small houses. So yeah, his thing was like, well, they could have all been wiped out when this flood happened.
Well, what was the myth around Atlantis?
Well, it was that it was basically wiped out in a flood, and it was always assumed that this was meant that it was wiped out into somewhere that's now underwater. So yeah, that's I've heard theories that they reckoned it was somewhere near Crete in the Mediterranean, and it was actually like when the Mediterranean flooded, like 15,000 years ago, there was a city there called Atlantis, and that there was a big earthquake and that wiped that out. But this is actually quite a nice theory that this Rishat's, it's actually called the Eye of the Sahara as well. It's it doesn't mention anything about this theory in here. It's like
it's interesting. So Atlantis was supposed to be this phenomenal civilization, right?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing was that it was supposed to be like, so what they were suggesting was these rings were filled in with like water, and it was like a canal-based kind of concentric rings.
Okay.
And obviously it's not now because it's in the middle of a desert. But yeah, I mean, that was quite an interesting. It was an interesting video. I'll try if I can dig it out. I haven't got that.
Yeah, the kind of stuff I like to watch. This is interesting. Very cool.
It's probably, as I say, it's probably. Oh, hang on. Make sure I don't. No, it's. Oh, did they finally find the lost city of Sahara? Right, and let's get to share it. Copy and put it. You might have had a bit of. This is going to be nice, boring. We had one troll comment from some random person I blocked. And the rest of the comments are just going to be me posting videos.
Good. It's interesting. We had a troll comment.
Yes.
I didn't have it. I have that still from our.
Oh, I hate this bloody. What they do is they have a. Oh no, I think it worked okay. I think that link saved. I was worried that I'd actually shared the link to the advert rather than the video itself. Okay, so what else have we got on the?
It's interesting. It's so funny that we can see all the comments from every platform you're using to stream into. I'm still getting used to that.
Yeah. Well, we don't. Yeah, I don't know why the Twitter ones go to the Periscope broadcast. I think
they go to like Twitter filters through. What is that app?
Periscope.
Periscope. It's so weird to me. So like people are commenting on Periscope or Twitter. It's weird.
You can't. No, you can't. I think you can only comment on Periscope.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
You can watch it on Twitter. So
okay, got it. I actually like how it looks on Twitter.
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about Twitter is you've got no way of pre-scheduling the tweet out. You can't do like this link to the tweet. So I had to go and retweet it now, just when it started.
I didn't even retweet. All right, are you ready for my recommendation? Hot recommendations by Christelle.
I totally forgot about you. I was like, this is all just turned into some sort of selfish, like idiot right now. I was just about to switch over to something else.
Okay, so hot recommendation. This is October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I want to put a really neat resource out there, which I love. I love this resource. It happens to be UK based. Of course, I found it through our friend Jennifer Gilmore. And the reason why I love this resource is because it trains on the trauma-informed method, which is so important because you can get a lot of really, really bad advice when it comes to domestic violence. So anything that is training on how to be trauma-informed and helping you heal. So the website is rockpool.life. The organization is called Rockpool. You can find them on Twitter, which it's at, and then Rockpool Life, ROCKPOOLLIFE. Follow them. They're amazing. And then, oops, lost the website. The website is Rockpool, ROCKPOOL.LIFE. And it says on, I'm reading their Twitter bio. It says, providing industry-leading training consultancy services for organizations that support people who have been affected by trauma. It's Domestic Violence and Awareness Month to support individuals who have experienced domestic abuse. We are giving away, they're giving away copies of the Recovery Toolkit by Rockpool's Sue Pena. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right. We can actually go on and retweet the post. I have the Recovery Toolkit. It's phenomenal. And I actually did a review on them, and I like it a lot. It's for people who have already fled. It's not for people still in the situation. Just because we require different things depending on the stage that we're in.
Shall we? Have you got any other recommendations?
No, just put a. Oh, good. You put the. Oh, you put it up.
Or like, shall we have as the serious bit? What happens if people don't use this approach to? Because I'm just kind of interested because you were saying like people who suffer from domestic violence can have bad advice. What kind of bad advice did you receive or heard other people receive?
I've had really bad advice since leaving. Bad advice includes you should be in touch with him and because you need to forgive him, which is the worst advice you could ever give someone who fled domestic violence. Do not ever get in touch with your abuser. Don't ever get. In fact, if you're leaving abuse, most often the advice is to completely gray rock. Gray rock is a term used in abuse, and you try to basically shut yourself off as best you can. It gets challenging when you have children with someone, but you do not want to be in contact with an abuser, period. They have learned to manipulate you financially, emotionally, sexually, physically. Absolutely do not get in touch. And that's thankfully, when I heard that advice, and it's been a couple times, I was in a headspace where I'm able to make choices and say that's absolutely not what you do. But had I heard that, when I first left, I may have listened. I've also, what's interesting to me is having gone through trauma therapy, the healing that happens, a lot of the healing has to do with no longer being a people pleaser. And once we stop being people pleasers, we just don't care, and we're better able to make choices on our own. So just going through trauma therapy has completely changed my life. I don't make the bad choices of kind of clinging on, because what happens in abuse too is you get weirdly addicted to this weird phenomena. You get weirdly addicted to, they call it a trauma bond.
Yeah.
You get weirdly addicted to this relationship that you had, even though you know it's unhealthy. And trauma, going through trauma therapy cut that for me. Some other advice that is very controversial is that you need to forgive your abuser. I went through trauma therapy based on that, and I believe in forgiving. However, a lot of times we have to heal. The first step is going through that trauma, and we have to heal, and don't even think about the forgiving. I stayed stuck in that. Like, I have to forgive. I can't figure out why I can't forgive. And it took trauma therapy and my therapist being phenomenal saying, Christelle, you don't have to forgive. You need to, let's work on the healing. Let's work on, but we hear all kinds of bad advice. Like, why you don't look like the kind of person who would have been in a abuse situation. Why didn't you leave sooner? Just so many odd questions. I can't think of really any more off the top of my head as to bad advice, but people think they know. And unless you walk in that situation, you just don't know. You just have no idea.
I think that's true with a lot of things in life.
Absolutely.
In my experience, relationship advice is generally useless. Not always the case, but because people's experiences are just so different, and and it's kind of like the number of people is just like they happen to, like, let's say they met their life partner on a bus or something, and then like, oh, everybody should go on a bus and meet people, and it's like, well, you're just basing it on one experience in life.
There's no rule to that. There's no rule.
It's kind of, but a lot of people, and it's something I've noticed really severely during lockdown and COVID, is that people are they really struggle to get beyond their own experience and to realize that other people have different experiences in life and come from different places, different backgrounds totally. And it's just because they may be coming from things like perfectly rational sense from their point of view, but to you, they're just mad or insane or something. And it's like, the whole thing is like, even your advice, what you were saying there about like not going back to abusers and the rest of it. I suspect that is certainly definitely true for anything kind of narcissistic abuse, but there could be other potential reasons, I suppose. But again, people were giving you advice based on some sort of weird spiritual thing that they'd heard, or somebody like, there probably are people who've forgiven and it's worked out, but I suspect that's probably the minority.
I'm going to say, if you're in an abusive situation, do not go back. I'm going to say straight up, don't go back.
Well, yeah, that's
get your therapy, get your lawyer, there's legal things here. There's safety things here. There's a lot of times police are involved. If we're talking about abuse, we're talking safety. And so I can't have any kind of weird, there's just such a balance, and we'd really have to know the situation. And I still wouldn't give it. I know I gave advice, but I don't know that I would give
advice
directly. I don't know that we should be giving advice on the show.
No. Well, again, it's like I've never been in that experience, so I can't really give advice. You can. I'm not really sure what the word is. You can help people. You can give support. Support.
Tim, in the UK, you guys have a lot of really neat resources that we actually don't have here in the US. And I'm learning about, for example, Rock Pool Life, incredible resource. You have Jennifer Kilmer, who's doing all the things she's doing. You have Who else? You have a woman's, wait a second, let me pull this up because we don't have this. Wait a second. A woman.
We have got women in the UK. Yeah.
No, it's a women's group that we don't have anything like this. Women's Aid. The Women's Aid Network. You need to hold on a second. I think my sister's locked out. Hold the fort down.
So we get to see, I get to commentate on Christelle walking out. It's like we lost her. Also lost the ADHD guy recently. You know, maybe I should change my deodorant.
Okay, I'm back. My sister was locked out of her own house. It's the Women's Aid Network in the UK, and I'm getting ready to start an organization with 2 other fabulous women here in San Diego. And so I've been looking at what you guys are doing in the UK. You just have so many resources that we don't have here. It's bizarre. And the other thing is, women wanting to flee domestic violence, we don't have anywhere to go. A lot of our homes are filled, or there's a waiting list, or it's specifically for something else. There's not a lot of places to go. You can't just leave, like that, this whole mindset, you can't, we have nowhere to go. I just talked to someone this week and I asked her, do you have somewhere to go? She's fleeing a violent situation. She said, I don't think I do. That's the reality. I mean, so looking at what you guys have in the UK, I'm extremely curious about how you're making it work. And we're going to kind of research that a little bit more, but you guys have a lot of resources.
I think there might be resources like that in the US, but they may be in like Pittsburgh or somewhere like that. You just don't know. I mean, that's the trouble. I mean, it's easy. I mean, there's loads of stuff out there actually in general that just loads of great stuff that's out there and people just don't know about it. I think that's one of the advantages of the internet, isn't it? Lots of people are connecting and finding this stuff. I mean, I'm sure if you look, there probably are similar organizations in the US, but
we have, I contacted a couple in San Diego alone. Finding a crisis type house, there's just not a lot of options. I did work in a homeless shelter for a time, and that is one option. Yeah. But a lot of our homes have wait lists. A lot of women and children fleeing. I know there's probably more options in like LA, Los Angeles. I got in contact with a neat organization that said they don't have anything here in San Diego. So I have a question for you, Tim. Who pays for these organizations that you have in the UK? Is it government funded? Is it privately funded?
Well, I suspect.
Do you have trusts? I mean,
there's a lot of money that goes from the National Lottery to charities. So that may be one area. Also, councils, and there are government grants and things. But I don't know. I think lottery funding might be because a large chunk of the lottery funding goes to charities and local sports and that kind of stuff. So that would be my suspicion, but I don't know. You'd have to ask Jen.
I hear a lot about trusts too, through like the Prince's Trust that pay for different organizations.
So that's just like it's a fairly small charity. Family. I don't think it's that big. Okay. Maybe I should do a quiz at some point. I'm not going to bother with the quiz this week because we haven't got enough time. But it was on book. Best selling books, and how many books they'd sold. So you can look forward to that next week.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was what the quiz was on, best-selling books. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Worldwide or US or UK?
Well, worldwide, but mostly British and American. Was one Chinese book. But it was a Wikipedia page article on the best-selling books. That's where I got my content from. So try not to. Well, you could cheat and never look at it. And it's like still doing remarkably well in this quiz.
I do read a lot. I do read a lot, and I am kind of aware of best-selling authors, unless, well, Yeah,
Well,
it
this
might
is
depend
historical.
on
There's like,
genre.
sorry?
Would you?
This is historical books. So,
Oh, okay. I did take
right,
a Chinese mythology class, which I absolutely loved.
yeah.
I'm a huge mythology fan. Huge
I did
history.
a shiatsu massage course once, but that's not another story.
You did what?
A shiatsu massage course, learning how to do shiatsu massage, which is clothed massage. I can't remember any of it at all. A 14-week course I did.
What is
It's
this
like,
for?
well, you know about reflexology and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
or yeah, well, shiatsu massage is kind of similar, but it's the whole body you do it over, and not just sort of. I was supposed
So
to be doing a reflexology course, but they were too full, so I said, "Do you want to do shiatsu massage?" And I'm like, "All right."
was this in the university?
No, this was evening classes. You know, I mean, in my 20s, it was kind of like, oh, well, I need to meet somebody romantically, so I'll try and do the old kind of evening class. It's a terrible, terrible bloody way of doing it, really. It's I did a few other things. I can't even remember. Well, I did salsa dancing lessons. Salsa dancing is quite a lot of fun.
That's brilliant. This is actually
It's
really
actually a terrible way to meet people, though.
why?
Well, because you're not, most of the time you're not really talking to people. You're just trying to do. Depends on the course you do and how social it is, and how, like, if people go drinking afterwards, sort of thing.
Okay, what else did you do? This is fascinating to me. I never dated. I mean, I went straight from like 19 to married. I mean, I never did any of this. So what did you tell me what you've done? This is
Oh
fascinating.
no, I mean, I was terrible at dating. I didn't date until I was in my 20s. So no, but I wasn't doing these things to date. I was doing these things in the hope of meeting somebody to date, if that made sense.
Well, no, I know. This is fascinating. This is brilliant. What else did you do?
I'm trying to remember. Oh, history of art, actually. Funny enough, I met Rachel at Totally Apropos to Nothing in the party while I was doing. That was actually really interesting. The funny thing is they don't seem to do it anymore. The National Gallery in London did a history of art Saturday morning course.
So you took a class?
Yeah, in the history of art. So, and the National Gallery, well, the way it works in London is the National Gallery does everything before 1900. So all of their paintings are before the year 1900, and the Tate Gallery do everything after 1900. So they're the big fancy, and also before 1900, a lot of the British paintings are in the Tate Britain rather than the National Gallery. So it was a bit of a peculiar. I did a history of art course, but it was basically stopped at 1900. But yeah, the funny thing, because I went to I went to I'm trying to work out their timings here. I went to Prague for a friend's wedding, and I had a kind of well, not revelatory, but I just got really into this particular art gallery in Prague that it wasn't even art, it was sculpture. So it was basically this most bizarre museum stroke art gallery sculpture place in Prague, and it was basically almost entirely sculptures of Jesus.
Okay.
And I'm not really religious at all, but there was just something about the way, because they had it was kind of like there was this whole thing about like sculptures. So it started off with the Virgin Mary with baby Jesus, and then they started having all of these kind of weird sculptures that came over time. So they had somewhere Jesus was holding the Virgin Mary, and then they had the Virgin Mary holding the crucified Jesus and stuff. And for whatever reason, I was like, well, I'm really into the kind of art. So I started going to more art galleries and getting into art. So I thought I would do a history of art course. And yeah, it's really, because history of art is not the same as art. It's not drawing and painting. It's learning about the history of art.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for somebody like me, I'm interested in history, but I'm not necessarily interested in like doing artwork and this, even though I probably could do that. I might do something like that eventually. But what's interesting is they kind of started the course about I think about 1300 or 1200, because there was a big change between art used to be just something that they got any old body to do a picture in the church of Jesus or something. It was literally like they would just get the workmen who were building the church to just knock off some. So you see, like pre-1200,
Yeah.
they had like these just like these stick men kind of, like, it's terrible, the art, basically. It was just basically, there was no concept of artists at all.
Yeah.
And then they had the Renaissance, and they started having people like Raphael and Michelangelo and people like that who were artists, and their style of art was amazingly better. And it also had a lot to do with materials as well. They started discovering egg tempura, so they made artwork out of egg yolks. So they made the pigments out of egg yolks, and that's how they produced the paints. And yeah, and then it went through all of the history of like, and how like in Northern Europe, they often didn't use egg tempura. They had to use oil-based paints because they were just, the climate was too cold for mixing egg yolk into thing. And yeah, it's fascinating history of art. I probably could go into a long. I can waffle about the history of art, even though I can't really remember much of it. There's so many different like schools and things where they broke off and they made new styles and all the rest of it. And a lot of it's to do with, it's also mixed in very much with religion, because obviously art used to be all about religion. And then Protestant art was very different from Catholic art after the kind of the split there. And people like Caravaggio's art is fantastic, obviously, because he's like the Counter-Reformation. So the Catholic Church basically wanted like almost hardcore art after the Protestant bit split off. So they got people like Caravaggio, Caravaggio was a nutter. He murdered people and stuff like that and got away with it because he was an artist.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so interesting in the history of art.
Oh, I love it. I love the history of art. So you took this class though to possibly just meet people.
Well, in the end of the day, I ended up doing all of these courses. I started off doing things in the hope of meeting people, and then I just ended up doing them because I was interested in the topic. So
yeah.
Screenplay is another thing I did. Writing screenplay.
I think this is a brilliant way to meet people. You do something that you're interested in. That means you're going to find hopefully someone possibly that is also interested in similar things.
Yeah. Well, actually, the screenplay course I did after Rachel, quite a while after Rachel died. So
okay,
more an interest thing. But actually, that's a way better thing to do to meet people than doing bloody massage.
Well, you ended up meeting your wife though through friends, right? It was through a friend.
It was a New Year's Eve party. So
yeah. You just never know. You absolutely never know. And usually it happens when you least expect it. But I do think that's brilliant going to, okay. So I've heard that British people and American people actually date different. We have different ways of dating and different styles of dating. Like here's something that I discovered. Here, if you go to coffee with someone, it's considered to be a date, usually, often. Like if someone was to ask me to coffee and it's a man, it's usually like a kind of like you're going to consider he's somewhat interested, you're going to coffee, it's heading towards possibly dating, you're getting to know. I heard in the UK that's not the case. Like you guys just go to coffee and you're friends and you don't even think that way.
Yeah, I think that's more the case here, but I think it's a bit of a grey area in general. It's kind of like I would say that I would say that. I mean, I would say that a coffee probably wouldn't be considered a date, or lunch or something like that.
Coffee or lunch or anything like that's not considered dating. It's like I heard that and this could be wrong because I actually read it, but the UK, you tend to more kind of just be friends and find out that you have similar things in common, and then you kind of end up partnering up, versus here in America, it's very, very dating friendly.
Yeah, well, I think in London it's kind of very much I mean, I think the kind of the friends first and then it develops into something is probably the best way to do it. But you can also get stuck in this kind of like, if it's too long periods, then yeah, I mean, there's no real right answer to any of this stuff. And I think, like, because historically in the UK, in the upper classes, in like, have you ever read Pride and Prejudice? They kind of had all these dances and things, and they had a very regimented structure as to how people met each other. And even in like the 1920s, 30s, 40s, there were dances and places for people to meet each other. Now we've got like online dating, which is absolutely terrible in general.
Yeah.
And because I mean, in many ways, looks are the least important thing, but our kind of vain society has got so obsessed with looks that it's forgotten about all the rest of the stuff.
I do find it interesting though, because here in America, like literally, if a man and a woman goes to dinner, it is considered dating of some sort. It's not like, you don't just, me having a partner, I wouldn't just go to dinner with another man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
no, I mean that's kind of the view my parents would have, and like I think a lot of my friends think like that. But I'm not sure generationally wise now that's the case. I think there's a generational difference as much as anything. I mean, certainly millennial people seem to have a different viewpoint to Gen X about dating a lot of the time. I mean, that's kind of noticeable. I mean, I think the whole introduction of technology and texting and all the rest of it has muddied the waters, let's say. And yeah, I mean, this
is interesting to me. Well, okay, so we're talking about serious stuff. Would you go to dinner with someone who is married? Would it be considered a date, or would it just be like everyone knows we're friends? It's not a big deal.
I've been to dinner with people I've known are attached, and it's just
friends.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, it can cause confusion though, and it's like, well, I'm of the opinion, unless there's like obvious talk about romantic stuff, then it's just platonic, so to speak. It could turn into something else, but obviously, like if somebody's attached, as far as I'm concerned, there's not, unless they tell me the situation has changed. And to be honest, it's like if somebody's coming out of a relationship or is in a bad relationship, you really don't want to be involved with them in that time period. You're way better to wait. I mean, I think I've learned that lesson in the past, is that you can think like, oh, somebody's getting divorced, and that's totally the wrong time to ever try and approach anybody.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 1,000%. Yeah, these are interesting concepts.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, now, like the number of households which are in kind of non-normal, historically normal. I mean, there's so many single parents and both sexes actually, and people who are being divorced or have got like, it's a very different thing to the historical situation. Like most people, because in the past it was worse, obviously, because there was a lot of people who were married who were in unhappy marriages that they couldn't leave for cultural reasons. And yeah, I mean that's terrible. But now it's kind of like you got all these like you got all the issues, and like if you date somebody with children, it's like you're dating like n number of other people as well.
Yeah.
So you got to get to know the children, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is a kind of different way of looking at things.
Very interesting. We went through the serious bit. We did all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we managed to talk out the quiz. Yeah, I can see I'm flagging. It's 9:29 here, and I think
we did it.
We did have some viewers at one point. We had one trolly comment who I blocked. Well, it wasn't trolly actually. It was spammy. It was kind of like you can invest in Bitcoin or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Twitter. So that's interesting. We had one trolley comment once on one of the interviews, but we're now getting to the point of having spam. So that's got to be a point.
That's good. That's good to know.
I think we did see a viewer at one point.
That's so funny. That's good to know. All right. Well, we did good. We came on super late. We're ending late. Tuesday. Who do we have on Tuesday?
It's a late replacement. It was supposed to be Neil Schaefer, but he can't do it. But it's going to be Nikki Krill, who's a friend of mine, who's South African. She lived in the UK for a while. She's an international speaker on Twitter and social media. And we're lucky to have her on because she's going to Qatar to work for a startup company doing the marketing, social media strategy for them.
Exciting. And I have a lot of questions. That's very interesting to me. So
yeah. So yeah. It's funny, I was messaging and I said, "You're actually a very interesting person." She said, "No," I laughed at that. I was like, "No, because we never appreciate how interesting we are to other people. We always think like, oh, nobody's interested in our story." And actually, I think she's probably one of the more interesting people I know.
It's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm very curious. Send me her information so I can look at her website and that kind of thing. That'd be
a good stalker.
I can stalk her thoroughly.
Just don't go for dinner.
That's cool. All right, Tim. I will. Oh, what's behind your head before we go? Did you write anything down?
Hang on. Let me go to full on.
Your focus defines your reality. Oh, that is very true. Very true.
I think that's from one of the Star Wars. Oh, I don't want this.
Yes.
I think it's one of the Star Wars prequel films.
Okay.
But it's one of the YouTube videos about Star Wars. Right, there's a Star Wars chat thing. They play that in the intro, this clip, and it's like, it's true actually. Your focus does define your reality. What you focus on is important.
Huh.
Anyway.
Well, I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you for watching our friends who popped in and out. We kind of did some interesting serious bits, I thought.
Yeah.
We did topics.
I'll talk a bit more about art later. I mean, I can talk about Impressionism at some point. That's interesting.
Oh, I love that kind of stuff. It's awesome.
Right.
We will see you on Tuesday. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I have to press this and then I do that.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.